Good morning from God's long lost mitten. Oh boy, we got a pretty doozy of a follow up to Ms. Brown Jackson's hearings. I am, a little preface to this. Miss Monica was not feeling too well because, of course, plagues spread. So as one child plague bearer has it, so do we all.
Yes,
so
of course, one at a time, too.
One at a time, of course. It just has to hit them all individually. And so, just prefacing by saying, I drug her out of bed because I had to have her check this out. And then, of course, in the time it took her to get ready, I felt my health deteriorating. So we might keep this one brief as we burn out. But hey, that's why we have coffee, the lifeblood. Now that I've set you up there, how you feeling, Miss Monica?
Oh, not bad. I'm definitely digging the coffee today instead of the normal, chamomile tea type stuff.
Oh, yeah. She's on my team now.
Yes, we'll be switching to chamomile tea a little bit later as this illness gets worse, I think.
Before we go into this, because we have a couple other things, some issues going on in Ukraine, and then, of course, I mentioned yesterday there was this Biden gaffe that just led tinfoil sombrero wearers like myself just right on, red alert. Like, what did he just say? And we may get to that. Again, all depends how we feel by the end of the show. The important stuff we will get to here, though. But I really just want to refresh everyone from yesterday. So we were talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is currently going through SCOTUS hearings. She was, President Biden had a campaign promise that he would nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. And, there you go. That's the end of the vetting for their team. So now it's our team's turn to vet. And we started looking into this woman's history. And Senator Josh Hawley was one of the people right out in front saying, I'm noticing an odd pattern here. And involving people who were involved in crimes involving children. And she seemed to be showing a pattern of leniency on their sentencing. And so Ms. Monica, being the amazing glass half full woman she is, laid out a very good counter-argument as to why we should take a deep breath and say, this is good, we want her to talk about it because there could be something there we're not seeing. Well, talk she did. And oh boy, you know what? Let's just hop right into our first article from Breitbart. Josh Hawley grills Ketanji Brown Jackson on alleged leniency on child, that word. You can see it. Yeah.
Yes.
So, we already know about this, that he had started this beforehand. They had met. He had told her he had concerns. And then he came out publicly with those concerns because he didn't want any kind of gotcha or anything of that nature. So, this started yesterday. It says, Senator Josh Hawley grilled Supreme Court Justice nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson Tuesday about her alleged leniency toward child, those individuals. Hawley asked Jackson regarding her time as a federal district court judge about giving, what do we want to call these people? CPs? I don't know. I need something quick. CPs? Diddlers? More lenient sentences than what sentencing guidelines recommend. Hawley said in one case that Jackson contended that the person being convicted of possessing this heinous material was not actually and you can see the word right there. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get flagged.
Yep.
Pathetic.
Yeah,
Pathetic.
even mentioning something like that puts you on the radar, but we can't sentence for it.
Oh, exactly. Oh, you're being too harsh. He noted that Jackson only gave the...
Defendant.
Okay. Defendant.
This is probably the best way to put that.
3 months. Far lower than what the sentencing guidelines suggested. Hawley said, quote, "You said to him, this is a truly difficult situation. I appreciate that your family is in the audience. I feel so sorry for them and for you and for the anguish this has caused all of you. I feel terrible about the collateral consequences of this conviction. Then you said, quote, P words are truly shunned in this society." So, before we go on with this, having known that she said that, obviously the family of the defendant are the real victims here because there's no mention of the, well, I guess it would be forgotten victim, the person he's on trial for doing things to. So before we even go into any more detail, that's the first response, and that's one of the most famous quotes that is being paraded around this whole situation. Immediately upon hearing that, does that change your mind at all, or do you still feel like she is coming from an area that we should respect?
There's a gut reaction to that of wanting to be like, whoa. How dare you stand up for somebody who would violate a child's rights? Like, these are victims who do not have their own voice in society a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So their parents, their advocates, their guardians, the legal system is supposed to work in their favor. But again, there are cases in this. It doesn't tell you the specifics of the case in that particular paragraph, but scroll down.
Yeah.
Because looking down into the article.
Oh, we'll get there. That's why I'm taking it piece by piece for you. But you skimmed ahead, you cheater.
The way that they're writing this and the way that they're framing it is making you have a knee-jerk reaction of how dare she.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's a but, and that's okay. This is why it's important to talk about these things.
Scroll down into the article and hear more about the case.
Let's do just that. So Holly said to Jackson, I'm just trying to figure out, Judge, is he the victim here, or are the victims the victims? Jackson said the case was, quote, unusual because the defense asked for probation for the offender, and he had just graduated from high school. Jackson emphasized that she wanted to avoid, quote, unwarranted sentencing disparities. He says, Josh Hawley says, there was a victim impact statement in this case. It didn't get read into the record, but it was there. You talk about heinous.
How heinous. Yeah.
I've heard it both ways. These crimes are, and you describe them to your credit. And yet, here you are giving him 3 months and apologizing to him. She said that, well, let's see here. Before I read this tweet. Okay. Okay. Kentucky Brown Jackson said the case was, quote, unusual because defense called for probation. Defendant had just graduated from high school, blah, 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 blah. Not up to date. Okay, so during the Supreme Court nomination hearing, Jackson argued that the congressional statutes and sentencing are not up to date. With all due respect, I'll be direct with you. I am questioning your discretion and your judgment. It's exactly what I'm doing. Well, that's just Josh Hawley again. So there is a detail missing here, and it's not in the article. In this case, the gentleman that did, the defendant, there's a word, who was 18 at this time, had just graduated high school. Yes, the forgotten victim was 8. So,
okay. See, that's what I'm looking for.
Exactly. That's what you're looking for. And you notice it's not even in here. I scrolled all the way to the bottom to see it was here. That's from an external source. Actually, that's from Josh Hawley's source material.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, you can look at it, and this is, again, even though this is Breitbart, widely renowned as a right source, a conservative source of news, even though they do actually show from across the spectrum. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like I was defending Breitbart, but
information in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that is extremely relevant to your decision on the how heinous this crime actually is. Because if you're looking at someone who they were in high school together, they were a couple, it was a mutual relationship, that does not equate to a predator. And that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Someone who maliciously goes after someone who is much younger than them.
Yes, and I would argue, I would argue that it's hard to say. I was gonna say I would argue that maybe you shouldn't put the age discrepancy in there because of how sick it is. But at the same time, if you don't, then you or I discussing this, if I hadn't done the independent research, we'd be like, well, maybe she was 16, because we've seen that pop up a lot.
Exactly.
A 16 and a 17-year-old are dating in high school. He turns 18. Boom. The parents are like, there it is, officer.
Personal case. I have a friend who that happened to him.
Yep.
And it tore his life apart. And then all of a sudden, from here on out, he has this stigma that this happened when he had just graduated high school. And then also, my mother dated a guy when we were down in Fenton, and he was put on the sex offenders registry because he was a construction worker and he was urinating on the job site.
Oh, man, those are the worst situations there.
So technically he was exposing himself in public, and he got picked up for it. He got charged with it. And I believe they pleaded down to like a lesser charge.
I'm sure it got somewhat worked out, because it is ridiculous.
It is one of those, okay, was he out there exposing himself to people, or the guy really had to pee and there wasn't a bathroom readily available? We've all been there.
Yes. So it's a rite of passage as a man to urinate outside, and for some reason now we're just being stigmatized about it. Come on.
It's a rite of passage for everyone to urinate outside. We go out into the back 40 all the time. Where do you think I have to pee? You go out and people are, I'm going to jump off the boat for a minute. Well, we know.
Yeah. I'll go for a brisk swim. Yeah, okay. Don't follow him. Go swim the other way.
But there's a difference, and that's why judges are allowed to have discretion.
Yep.
So, okay, Obviously, he just graduated high school. The victim in this case...
The victim?
Did not receive justice, in my opinion.
Oh, you mean the victim? Not who the judge said was a victim.
No.
Okay,
no.
okay. Just making sure we got our victims straight.
And 8 is, there's no...
Hold that thought. Let's hop over to the post-millennial for another senator's perspective. Oh, Senator Ted Cruz.
This is a little different with me not having access to the article.
Oh, yeah, I should have said that. So,
yes,
Miss Monica, she was recovering. Reaction. I kicked the door in and I said, hey, get up. We got a show to do. She says, can I sleep? I said, you could, but you're going to want to see this. And then she says, okay, we have a routine. We love talking about the articles. We research them. We send them to each other. Say, hey, we want to talk about this. Do you think this is good? Yada, yada, yada. This time I said, let's keep things moving. You're not feeling well. I'm starting to not feel well. I tell you what, most of these you're familiar with. I'll introduce you to them for the first time when we're recording. So we're getting these all at the same time. So, quote, do you believe the voice of the children is heard when 100% of the time you're sentencing those in possession of this illicit material to far below what prosecutors were asking for? Cruz asked. So, on the second day of Biden-nominated judge, blah, 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 Senator Ted Cruz grilled the SCOTUS nominee Tuesday on her judicial record. He displayed a table. See if I can make this big enough. I don't want to play the video, and I don't think they show just the image of it. He displayed a table of Jackson's light sentencing of offenders, outlining the federal cases, the government's recommendations, the sentencing guidelines, and the sentencing imposed at the time. Let's look at what the...
Yeah, so it looks like in the article he's got 8 separate cases up, yep. And let me just read the sentencing guidelines for it and the sentence imposed. So the government's recommendation on the first case was 60 months. The sentencing guidelines on it was 151 to 188 months, and the sentence imposed was 60 months, which is the mandatory minimum. Yep. That's the government. She went with the government's recommendation on that one.
Well, she went with that's the literal mandatory minimum. She couldn't go any lower by that.
Well, no, because she did the mandatory minimum. But
on that first one alone, I mean, because you'll see discrepancies between the government's recommendation and the sentence imposed. So I just want to make sure that's why he emphasized mandatory minimum. She could not go any lower.
Okay, and then the second case, so the government's recommendation was 120 months. Sentencing guidelines, 151 months to 188 months. The sentence imposed by her was 120 months. Yep. The third one, 78 to 97 months
was the recommendation.
Is the government's recommendation as well as the sentencing guidelines. Yep. So that one lined up, and yet she only sentenced them to 28 months. That's
yeah. And then you can see down. Unfortunately, I've got the image big enough where you can kind of make it out on the screen, but this big play button's obviously blocking us. I mean, it follows right down. The recommendation 72, which is actually half of the sentencing guideline, and she did 60. 70, she did 60. This one down, third one down that Mr. Cruz's coconut's blocking actually gets my attention. The government's recommendation was 24 months. The sentencing guideline was the 97 to 121. What does that say there next to it?
3 months.
3 months. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger, a little smaller so we can continue reading. So, and I would note that this is in the District of Columbia, where prosecutors are far more liberal than many of the prosecutors in this country. Yes. So where is this one? So this is United States v. Hawkins, because he's going into each one individually. And if you want to, we can go into each one individually, but going over the chart gave us a good gist. And this is going to... I was going to look... I mean, it doesn't look like it goes into too much detail because...
Well, I mean, it looks like he's got... in that third column, they're going over kind of the difference in the amount of months that were appropriate.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I want to see the United States v. Hawkins.
88 months off of the recommendation.
There it is.
24 months off of the recommendation. 41 months off of the recommendation. We're not talking days.
Yeah.
We're talking months off of sentencing.
So here it is. You had to scroll down a little bit because, I mean, he really does just break down each one, but essentially the details were laid out by us beforehand, and the details inside just... Do you really want to know what these people are actually being sentenced for? Because that it'll just make you more angry. But it says in the United States v. Hawkins, the prosecutor asked for 24 months. Jackson imposed 3 months. The sentencing guidelines called for a sentence of up to 10 years, while Jackson decided on mere months. I mean, this was highlighted, but of course, There's nothing here. Nothing here about why she did it. So let's see what happens here. Every single case, 100% of them, when prosecutors came before you with illicit children cases, you sentence the defenders to substantially below, not just the guidelines, which are way higher, but what the prosecutor asked for on an average of these cases, 47.2% less. Now you said you made sure the voice of the children was heard. Do you believe the voice of the children is heard when 100% of the... Oh, wait, I heard that one. Jackson answered. All right, here we go. Yes, Senator, I do. Wait, that's it?
That's all she came back with?
Biden administration Supreme Court pick said at the hearing that the chart did not include all the factors judges are given by Congress to consider, including the recommendation of probation officers, to which Cruz said, we don't have those provisions, but would welcome them. Quote, Senator, the evidence in these cases are egregious. Evidence in these cases are among the worst that I have seen, and yet, as Congress directs, judges don't just calculate the guidelines to stop. Judges have to take into account the personal circumstances of the defendant because that's a requirement of Congress, she said when Cruz asked if the evidence was less than the prosecutors asked for. So she's admitting that these are egregious. They had the evidence showing how bad they were, and yet she was still lenient. I mean, even at what she's saying, take into account the personal circumstances of the defendant. What I was going to say, what possible personal circumstances could justify such lenient sentencing in such a damning category?
So here's the thing, and this isn't just her stance on child-related instances.
Right. Oh, we'll get into more here in a second. This is just following up from the discussion yesterday.
This is the left's reaction to having two conservative Supreme Court judges put into place. They want the most lenient, the most left-leaning to argue the point against them. They don't want someone who's even close to middle of the road where both sides can kind of see, which is exactly why this is getting worse, is because when you take someone and you go, you know what, to balance out their two, we're going to get the most extreme, the most lenient judge possible.
I see where you're coming from. I think
that's okay.
I think it's a bit of a stretch because everything they're doing is extremely to the left, and this person is no question. But you know what? Before we move on to her next topic of answers, I do have to go to the expert on this because an expert has chimed in on this exact thing. From the Daily Wire, Jeffrey Toobin says... illicit kid material sentences are too harsh because the internet makes access easier. I really wanted you to see this one.
I mean, for him, the internet made access really easy.
Oh, it really did.
For exactly what that meant.
Jeffrey Toobin, a man who was caught
in a compromised position.
To himself.
Yes, to himself.
On a Zoom call. With his female coworkers. I mean, we were all going through it for a bit where we're like, man, I never get up from my computer. I can't go outside. I never get out of the house. I got all these Zoom calls. I don't think any of us went, you know what? But the good news is, like Mr. Toobin, if we get caught doing that, I mean, we're just going to get welcomed back a couple months later, so why not?
No, this is absolutely ridiculous, and this is straight out of their playbook. Hey, let's take someone who is publicly shamed and put them in front of the camera and say, how did this negatively affect your life? Well, when you make bad decisions... like exposing yourself on a Zoom call in front of coworkers, come on.
Come on, man. Come on, son. Come on, son.
For those of you listening, we are huge fans of Psych.
Jeffrey
so
Toobin.
You will see reference to that every once in a while.
If you're listening, you won't see him, but I get what you're saying.
Well.
I just had to highlight that this is the expert they roll out, Jeffrey Toobin.
Wow.
I mean, the guy's last name is literally a hilarious metaphor now.
Well, because they're trying to garner sympathy from this weak crowd of people who cannot stop themselves from self-gratification in any given moment.
Like these what do you call it? Well, I know what the word is, but I feel like there's another word for people who descend from Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm aware of what the word is, but...
It's an impulse control issue.
It is, but like, that's just it. It's an impulse control issue that the left seems to only encourage and only push. There are people who have
so many... And they're encouraging these mental disorders, which is the same thing that we see on TikTok, and it's the same thing that we see on social media.
That is so true.
They are encouraging everyone to think that you have something wrong with your brain, but it's okay.
Yep.
You don't think like a normal person. Okay,
it's all
first
good,
off,
man.
Normal person, all of this within the range of day-to-day everything. People have got to stop with the idea that they're special. Like, well, everybody.
Okay, no. It's okay to consider yourself special. It is not okay to insist everyone else does.
That's true.
That's the difference.
Yes.
We can all consider ourselves to be the most unique, amazing, special snowflake ever. The problem comes when we then insist everyone else adhere to our delusion.
But I guess the definition of when people start saying that they're special makes them feel higher. And,
yes.
And
oh yeah.
You can say, yes, I'm unique, different. But to sit there and say that every single person needs to be put on their own little platform isn't true.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's the thing. Again, this always comes back to that First Amendment debate we have where I'm 100% with giving everyone their own podium because then you know who not to follow. But I can understand the danger of it because, of course, I may be smart enough to say, that person's cuckoo, I'm going to walk this way. But the next person behind me might go, well, you know what? I'm going to listen. It might be something decent in there. Then they're a part of it.
Well, that's because there's always people who take advantage of
this is true. Mostly Democrats. But, that was the follow-up there. We're going to go into our next topic of discussion, which is frankly even more insane.
Oh, we're leaving Tubin to his
opinion? We're leaving Tubin to his Tubin. Yes, we're not going to go there. We're actually going to hop over to Daily Mail.
Well, real quick, I do think that there is, like we have discussed, there's reasons to reform some of our guidelines.
And sure.
Take a look at them and to and there's a certain reason that judges are allowed discretion.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we have to hold them accountable for them choosing to use that discretion.
Well, I was thinking I 100% agree with everything you were saying, but couldn't they have picked a better topic to focus on?
Yeah.
Couldn't they have said, we got problems? I mean, certain drugs are legal in certain states, but they're illegal on a federal level, and people are locked up because of them, even in states where it's been made legal. I mean, look at California. Look at Kamala Harris's record there. She still has people locked up for petty drug crimes, and then she goes on some radio show and brags about doing those same petty drug crimes, which, of course, was debunked because she referenced listening to Snoop while she did it, or not Snoop, Tupac while she did it, and it was pre-Tupac or something. It was so stupid. Kamala Harris is just full of crap. 100% of the time.
This is just
impulsive
liar.
Stage.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
but
she can't help it.
The point is, she locked up people. She held people beyond their sentencing for free labor. And a lot of these people are locked up for petty drug crimes. So if you're like, I'm an idealistic little lawyer, I'm going to be a judge one day, I need to change the system because the system does need to change. We can all agree aspects need to change. But holy crap, lady, this is the subject you choose to change? That's the problem.
Well, I'm of the opinion that, if somebody's going to do drugs, if somebody's going to, lean into methamphetamines and all this other stuff, the people around them who know them should try and get them help.
Oh, absolutely.
But we do not need to build a system around the idea of helping someone who's harming themselves. They're choosing to harm themselves.
Wait a minute. So you mean my government-sponsored crack pipe that Biden just sent me I shouldn't use?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a big no for me.
But why would he send that to me?
And
it's like he was trying to help the people around him. He said,
"Come on, man!" It's the same idea behind these things that they've been funding at the National Science Institute, like the study of quail, their sexual proclivities while they're on or off cocaine. If that's how you want to spend your career, then by all means, get someone to invest in it so you can figure that out. But as far as I'm concerned, that is not a taxpayer-funded necessity.
No, not at all.
We have got to stop the frivolous spending for the sake of spending.
Well, we've had this discussion from a business standpoint. You're given a certain budget, and if you do not meet that budget, then they'll say, well, you don't need the budget, so here's a lesser budget. Well, no one wants their budget slashed, so then they'll make the most frivolous things ever. And that's being very glass half full about it. I personally think that 99% of it's laundering, kind of like we were learning.
It absolutely
about
is.
Every aspect of our government.
It absolutely is.
They literally are just stealing people's money and just giving it to themselves and their cronies. But anywho, back to the important topic here, to the Daily Mail. Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, refuses to define the word woman because she's, quote, not a biologist, as she is grilled on day 2 of her confirmation hearing. I have got to read this. This is amazing. So this was Senator Marsha Blackburn was talking to her. Quoting the late Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Blackburn said, quote, "Physical differences between men and women are endearing. The two sexes are not fungible. A community made up exclusively of one sex is different from a community composed of both. Do you agree with Justice Ginsburg that there are physical differences between men and women that are endearing?" the senator asked. When Jackson claimed she had never heard the quote, Blackburn asked directly, well, "Can you define the word woman?" "Can I provide a definition?" Jackson responded. "No, I can't," she declared before adding, "I'm not a biologist."
I mean, maybe this woman has made it to the point where she's nominated for the Supreme Court and has no idea of the difference between biology. Like, it's amazing to me how many people are...
This is someone trying to get on the highest court in the land, trying to decide the fate of millions in constitutional cases.
This is also somebody trying to get on the highest court in the land. You have to remember, she's not trying to upset the vocal minority.
You don't want to upset your base.
And that's the worst part about the left and their approach with things. They're not willing to upset the vocal minority to show support for the majority.
Right.
And if you are going to the Supreme Court, you have to rule based on guidelines put out by the majority. The minority does not lead. That's not how this goes.
It shouldn't. And unfortunately, our government has shifted towards basically following Twitter. But man, that is interesting. So
I don't know. Twitter is a cesspool.
Twitter is a cesspool. Stay off of there. Like I said.
And also, we can't post to our account because apparently we're a bot.
Oh, that's true. That is true. We can't post to our account because apparently we're a bot. Super shocker there. I mean, it's... You just knitter.net. Just keep that in mind. Knitter.net. If you ever see it,
just don't even bother with it.
Yeah, but sometimes it is useful because there are a handful of people on there that you actually do want to hear.
Oh, it's fun to see the interactions. Just switch to Rumble and Gab.
Exactly. So, in response to Jackson's decision to remain mum on the definition of a woman, Blackburn retorted, "The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA Women's Swimming Championships." The senator continued in reference to Leah. Did we ever determine if... Well, let's see. If it's William... Well, no, because it's either it doesn't work either way. Yeah, it's either
Leah or
Leah.
I think it's Leah.
You think it's Leah? Because I've heard both.
Yeah,
like I actually have heard both. What messages do you think this sends to girls? But Jackson refrained from sharing her.
He's the liar about being a woman.
Oh snap! But Jackson refrained from sharing her stance on the matter. I'm not sure what message that sends. If you're asking me about the legal issues related to it, those are topics that are being hotly discussed, as you say, and could come to the court. So I'm not able to address them. Oh, that's literally what you're applying to do. If this were a job and I said, theoretically, in this scenario, under your position, how would you feel? And you went, no, I don't know. That's for the people in that position.
I don't know, because I do believe that during this, they should be looking at her track record to see which way she may or may not lean, which is the same thing I believe they did with... oh my gosh, female Supreme Court justice just nominated.
Amy Coney Barrett. Yep.
So when they were asking her things, she said, well, I can't discuss that because that may come before me on the Supreme Court.
Oh, I see. Okay, then I'll take that. That's fair.
Yeah, you don't want to sit there and say, this is how I'm going to decide this without having everything that is part of their case presented.
I'll withdraw my snide.
Somewhat.
I mean, I'm still not convinced. In fact, it moves on to the next subject here. Back to Senator Cruz. He grilled Jackson about a critical race theory with books including Anti-Racist Baby. So Cruz, who pointed out that he and Jackson were a year apart at Harvard Law School and were friendly at the time, veered from legal arguments to the heated debates over critical race theory, an academic area which blah, 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 blah. Basically says that, everything is evil and racist and yada, yada, yada. Displaying a stack of books on racism, including, I love this one, quote, Anti-Racist Baby. I'm going to say that again. Anti-Racist Baby. And The End of Policing From the reading list at Georgetown Day School, a prestigious private campus where Jackson serves on the board, Cruz pressed the nominee for her views on the topic. I've never studied critical race theory, Jackson told Cruz. It doesn't come up in the work I do as a judge. Oh, really? Cruz then pointed to a portion of Anti-Racist Baby that read, babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Ugh. Do you agree with the book being taught to kids that babies are racist? After a thoughtful pause, Brown replied, I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist or that they are not valued or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that. That's a fair answer. That's a good answer. That's a great answer.
Like, the babies are neutral. We need to move forward with the idea of neutrality, and the fact that there's an anti-racist baby book that talks about the babies need to confess when being racist. This is ridiculous. Wow. We've gotten to the point where they're looking for reasons to be offended because people have stopped being offensive.
Well, here, I've got something for you because I just noticed the article did not have it. So we're going to play a clip here. You'll be able to see it but not hear it, my dear. Or excuse me, vice versa. You'll be able to hear it but not see it, my dear, since it's on my monitor. But this is from that exact same exchange.
But I've never studied critical race.
Maybe? Oh, you know what? It is playing. I don't think you'll be able to hear it either. You know what? I guess I can't play it. But basically, she says exactly what the quote said. It doesn't come up in my work that I do as a judge. But then Senator Cruz then read a quote from her saying that critical race theory is part of her work as a judge in sentencing offenders.
Oh.
Yeah. So, sorry, the clip doesn't seem to be working. I'll get this figured out at some other point. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Again, from Knitter. This is from the Election Wizard Twitter account. But yeah, she came out and said, absolutely not. And then, excuse me. And then he was like, oh, really? And immediately quoted where she said it. And we can actually, I'm just going to hop right next to the Breitbart article here. SCOTUS nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson, inspired by critical race theory, 1619 Project, Black Lives Matter protest. And this actually goes into what has happened. It says, during a lecture to the University of Michigan Law School in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, unearthed by the Daily Wire, Judge Jackson, who would be confirmed to the U.S. Court of Appeals, make this just a little bigger. There we go. Hopefully that's readable. The following year, cited Bell's book, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, and said her parents had it on their coffee table as she was growing up. Dr. Janet Bell's late husband, Professor Derek Bell, who was a civil rights lawyer. Come on, what are you doing? It appears there's somebody outside. Nowhere near us, of course. Do you have this article open?
No, I do not.
All right, nope, she's over it. Anyways. Who was a civil rights lawyer and the first tenured African-American professor at Harvard Law School, wrote a book in the early 1990s about the persistence of racism in American life that he entitled Faces at the Bottom of the Well. My parents had this book on their coffee table. I found it difficult to reconcile the image of the person, blah, 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 both of which were highly disabled. Okay. The book argues that other Americans define their identity in relation to black Americans who are forced to stay at the bottom of society. In one chapter, The Space Traders, Bell created a fiction... a fictional allegory in which the U.S. would agree to sell its black citizens to space aliens in exchange for gold that would help settle national debt. This is ridiculous. Christopher Rufo, a journalist who is focused on revealing the use of critical race theory in schools and the workplace, has noted that Bell did not merely treat the space traders as a thought experiment, but believed it represented the true state of race relations in America. Wow. I mean, it goes on from there, and I mean, Judge Jackson also cited the 1619 Project, which of course is ridiculous.
But here's the thing, though. So, okay.
Yep.
She's the Supreme Court nominee.
Sure.
Is there any way that she's not becoming the justice?
If she does not get the votes.
Okay. So where's she at as far as votes right now? Like, what are we thinking?
It doesn't work like that. They do the hearings, then at the end of the hearings, they vote.
Oh, so there's no inclination of how everybody's going to lean to.
Well, I mean, the Dems are voting, so it's really just on the Republican side, and it could go either way. I mean, many people expect her to because Republicans are just spineless do-nothings, so there's a very good chance that they won't fight back, despite the opposition we're seeing. However, if you do want something more of an idea of the national opinion on the matter, which of course you take with a grain of salt, just 47% say Joe Biden's Supreme Court nominee should be confirmed. Now, this again is from Breitbart. Actually, the last source is on Breitbart today. The reason I bring this one up, it says only 47% of voters believe President Biden's Supreme Court nominee should be confirmed. 19% oppose her confirmation. Many independents are wary of Jackson. And this is what it all comes down to, and this is why the Dems are fighting so hard for the midterms, is they've lost the independents. And the independents are what you need to be. A lot of people think, the system would be so much better if there was a third party, not realizing that there always is. And the politicians are aware and always catering to them. It's the independent vote. The independent vote is basically the silent third party that sways one way or the other and allows...
Yeah, which we've seen on all of the tracking for pretty much every
Exactly.
election
Now
across,
we do, but I'm just saying, there is another group there that aren't just strictly one side or the other, and that's the important group to be a part of.
The really sad part is I think the majority of us actually fall into that.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been pigeonholed to believing that,
exactly.
Like you and I say, well, we're Republican, but then I'm like, no, we're really not Republican.
No, we're conservative, but I mean...
I would say we're liberal in a lot of sense.
That's just it. I always like to say that we were, center-leaning left for a long time, but the Overton window just shifted so far that now look at us. We look like blood red conservatives.
Yes.
I mean, it's just the way it goes.
All right, Fatso is getting at the window.
Oh, don't fat shame that puppy. She got those big childbearing hips. What is
my
it,
big
pup?
girl?
Is that mailman out there mocking you again? She freaks out the mailman. So let's see if I can just pet her right here next to me. See if she'll just chillax right here. Sit down, pup. Sit down. Take a little load off. I mean, Jackson's polling per this article is also much worse than Justice Samuel Alito's, Justice John Roberts, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Justice Clarence Thomas. Oh, man. Clarence Thomas. There's actually something here that, unfortunately, if the audio doesn't work, let me test it. Oh, boy, it does. I want to play this clip.
Okay.
This is as the Judiciary Dems begin their confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. I want to remind the media, Democrats, and the American people of the disgusting, quote, high-tech lynching Clarence Thomas endured by Joe Biden and the Democrats during his confirmation hearing. The purpose I want to play this clip is to show you, I'm not going to say something like who Joe Biden really is, but I will say this is his track record with, we talked about it yesterday, he filibustered George Bush's nominee, first African-American nominee. Yep. He filibustered her. She had to come back 2 years later, try again. This is a very famous clip. It's 2 minutes long about Clarence Thomas during his confirmation hearing.
This hearing should never occur in America. This is a case in which this sleaze, this dirt, was searched for by staffers of members of this committee, was then leaked to the media, and this committee and this body
There's old Joe.
Validated it and displayed it at prime time over our entire nation. How would any member on this committee, any person in this room, or any person in this country would like sleaze said about him or her in this fashion, or this dirt dredged up in this gossip and these lies displayed in this manner? How would any person like it? The Supreme Court is not worth it. No job is worth it. I'm not here for that. I'm here for my name, my family, my life, and my integrity. I think something is dreadfully wrong with this country when any person in this free country would be subjected to this. This is not a closed room. There was an FBI investigation. This is not an opportunity to talk about difficult matters privately or in a closed environment. This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a Black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas, And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Oh, man. And, of course, old Joe, and you want to look into his history. I mean, that guy, anyone who thanks a head leader of the KKK and says he was a mentor to him growing up, he shouldn't be president and he shouldn't have been here. But, I mean, this perfectly encapsulates the Democrat Party and what is going on right now with this hearing. You saw what they did to Kavanaugh, to Comey Barrett. We've seen history of what they've done to anyone who wanders off their plantation in their perspective, in their point of view. And Clarence Thomas puts it best right there. And they drug him through. Oh boy, it was bad. It was Joe Biden.
Here's the thing. I don't know anything about his confirmation.
Understandable. This was 1991. This was 1991.
Yeah, if we think about that. So I was not even 10.
Oh, I wasn't either, but hey, man, YouTube exists.
Well, I'm well aware of that, but I'm just wondering, like, now I'm like, okay, now I need to look into that and what their side was doing.
I'm not even going to quote some of the things that Joe Biden was saying around this time in those 90s when he was pushing his disastrous crime bill and the things he was saying about minorities. The very fact that the media was able to memory hold this for an entire generation. If you're curious what the background noise is, my lovely doofus dog is just infatuated with chasing her tail. So pardon that. If things seem a little rumbly, it's because there is a party in this house.
We might need to cut some stuff out for the podcast.
Yeah, nah, it'll be fine. Everyone will be fine. They'll be just like, look, there's a little puppy. Or, a rumble in the jungle. Who knows? I don't know. There's something going on there. So that pretty much wraps up the update for the SCOTUS confirmation hearing, at least so far. Do you do all that behind me? You do, don't you? It's fine. That's fine. She's a good dog. She's a good dog. So the next thing that we had to talk about was it was Ukraine related, and like I said, it had to do with the Joe Biden gaffe. But aside from the pattern of how the Democrats act and how they expect to be acted, that kind of thing, what do you make so far of the nominee and basically just like everyone else in her party, she came out, she said things, and they've all proven to be demonstratively false, at least on paper. You have very good optimistic theories as to why she may have been what she was, but at least on paper, someone can look at these and say, well, everything you said was kind of false based on your behavior. But you tell me, what do you think after day 2's update?
I really think that they are trying to find someone who is the most extreme on leniency, which is what they believe needs to happen. And so I was watching a video with Jordan Peterson the other day, and he talked about the programs that we put into place in regards to gender identity and all of these things. The more lenient you are on this, the more open you are about, yes, we need to put women into these positions. Yes, we need to make these check marks. The more of a gap grows. Yep. And I think the same thing can be applied to racial identity and the programs that we put into place. I mean, if you really want everyone to have an equal footing, then make sure everyone has an equal footing. Yeah. Stop charging so much for universities. Oh, yeah. Good luck with that. Or privatize them.
That's true, too. Yeah, we shouldn't be funding them.
If they're not on the government dime and they are privatized and people want to go there and contribute their money and make it an institution and build it up within the people, has nothing to do with the government. Yeah, and that's where we fall into this trap of the government subsidizes these places, and then we allow a certain percentage of people have to fall into categories.
I was going to say my contribution to this whole situation would be, like you said, there needs to be an equal playing field, and you need to eliminate, I'm not just going to blame the Democrats, although they are by and large perpetrators of this, but you need to eliminate this bigotry of low expectations. You need to get rid of things like affirmative action, which basically say to certain groups of people, oh, well, you're better or worse than them because of how you look, so we're going to boost you up or we're going to push you down.
Or you're not held to the same standards because of where you came from.
Exactly. Or even what you look like. That's just the thing. A lot of these, I remember reading a couple years ago, there were people getting into colleges with the most insane, over-the-top essays that they would submit. Like one guy writing racial slur just over and over and over and over, but because he was of a certain demographic, he was allowed in. Now that was big, but at the same time, it really shows and exposes the weakness that this bigotry has created.
Well, and because even though we are requiring certain percentages of people to get into places at this point and saying, yes, if you meet this check mark and this check mark, you're getting in before someone else who might have scored higher than you or have all these other things, you still have that small group of elites who are interconnected and who use their ability because they know someone or they have the ability to pay outrageous price tags on things to walk into these institutions and say, I'm a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So you're cutting out the middle class completely.
Yep.
And the middle class is the majority because they're the ones who are paying those taxes. They're the ones who are like working every day, producing things. That's why we have food shortages. That's why we have shortages in the supply chain, because the middle class is getting fed up.
Yep.
Because
And
the
it's
disparity
understandable.
between the super rich and the super poor is getting larger every day.
I mean, that was the biggest byproduct of the coup was the sheer transfer of wealth from the lower middle class to the upper class.
But to be fair, we're doing it to ourselves.
Oh, no, absolutely. But we were put in a situation over the, that year to 2 years, because some of us broke the mold pretty early, but we were put in this situation where they basically told everybody, this is your only option right now because we are literally closing everything else.
Yes.
And then suddenly these individuals who led the charge all got obscenely rich.
Yes. And instead of saying, oh, well, that's fine because I can survive for the next 2 weeks on my own, people can't do that. They've gotten so accustomed to conveniences. And like you said, who was it that did the study and when they were out asking people, well, what's going to happen when the supply chains break down? And,
oh, boy.
And where are you going to get your milk? And they said, well, the grocery store.
The grocery store. Yep. That was pathetic. I mean, that's the difference, though. They did the poll between two different demographics. The stereotypical conservative demographic, which were, smaller town people who knew farmers, country folk, we'll say. And then, the uppity urban liberal types who they know the bubble of their world. And even the guy that they were interviewing, I think he had come out that he had made some ridiculous comments. So he took a picture when he was flying to Chicago and he said who would live in these god awful places and all this. And it was just farmland. Yeah. And of course people were like, hey bro, that's where your food and everything comes from.
Yes.
But it just shows the gap between the two. And should any kind of collapse, any kind of balkanization come, anything like that happen at that immediate point, one side is going to shrug and say, well, it's going to be a little harder, but we'll be all right. Where the other side is going to turn into, I don't know. How about Escape from New York? Is that a good reference?
Oh,
that's a good one. I was going to say,
now.
Yeah, I do love Escape from New York. I was going to say either that or I had another one. I just lost it. Oh, another, liberals destroy themselves in their own empire type thing. But
well, we're gonna have even worse issues with homeless.
Yeah,
we're gonna have even worse, and these people flock to large cities thinking that they can live off the super rich and the programs and the things,
or make it.
And that's why we have such a bad influx of immigrants in this country right now.
And opening our southern border.
Well, they say we want to live in the promised land. Okay, well, if we take the promised land, then it no longer becomes the promised land.
Yep.
It becomes the exact same place that you were just fleeing from. So we have to find a balance. I'm not saying that the United States shouldn't be helping other people. We absolutely should. There's not a humanitarian crisis that we should not attempt to help and assist and save lives. Save lives is the thing. Not step in and
I'm going to say
is
our
programs.
You put your mask on before you put your kid's mask on.
That's exactly
You take care of yourself, then you check on the crisis over the border.
The reason people are getting so upset right now with the Russia-Ukraine issue is because they're seeing damaging results at home.
Yeah.
and not seeing any effort going into fixing these issues.
No, all of our effort seems to be going into fixing someone else's issues.
Yes.
And that's problem number one.
And they're going to say, oh, well, the inconvenience of you not being able to choose between 17 types of chips doesn't make it okay for us to not step into Ukraine. Well, no, but when it comes down to the point where we are seeing where this is leading, okay, a shortage of people led to stocking issues, which led to supply chain issues, which now is leading to actual shortages where you can't get. It's not just that you can't get your choice of options, it's that you cannot get what you are going to need to move forward.
Yep, or it just becomes too expensive to get.
Yes.
And I mean, that's all part of the plan. We're not going to go into it because, like I said, I actually ran out of coffee, so now that the lifeblood is gone,
I
know, but one of the things that, and you know what? Here, I'll just bring up the article because I did have it open. The gaffe I mentioned, the tinfoil gap, was Biden said there's going to be a new world order, and of course, it could mean anything. But let's read the full quote here just to put it in perspective. We are at an inflection point. I believe in the world economy, not just the world economy. In the world occurs every 3 or 4 generations, which is funny because he's talking about the fourth turning, Strauss intergenerational theory. As one of the top military people said to me in a security I'm sorry, let me just say it again. As one of the top military people said to me in a security meeting the other day, I can't, this guy.
Which, so it's
sure.
Just like me referencing having a conversation with you.
Okay, sure. 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we've established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while.
This is that tinfoil hat the QAnon rabbit hole that we were discussing.
It's you can say that as much as you want, and it's fair to say, but the fourth turning was called a conspiracy theory, and here he is referencing it. They're aware of what's happening. They may not be perpetuating it, but it doesn't mean that they don't see the signs and say, how can we make this work for us?
That's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
And to continue his quote, a lot of people died, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there. We've got to lead it, and we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. That, I think, speaks to the fact that he's not referring to some underground order of people who are bringing about these catastrophes to put themselves in a position of power. I truly believe this is him referring to the fact that out of chaos has to come some type of organization. Out of the housing market crash came the reform antitrust laws.
Oh, right. You mean where we bailed out all the banks?
No.
No? After that?
No, I'm talking about the actual laws that went into place on how you conduct real estate transactions. Yep. And the fact that we were going into it where you'd have to have a loan, and you would have to have someone appraise the house for the value in order for you to get the loan.
Right.
You would also have someone look at your records to determine if you qualified for the loan. Well, the people who were qualifying you for a loan were getting paid off of the amount of your loan. That's not shady at all.
Not at all.
Sure, if I get paid a higher percentage, I'm going to qualify for you $1 million loan versus say $500,000 loan.
Yeah, they were greenlighting people left and right.
And it became chaos. It became this system that could not be supported. The people who were appraising the houses for the banks were best friends with the people who were approving the loans.
Well, of course. And it was all insider trading.
Because of that issue, the appraisers can no longer have direct communication with the person at the bank.
So the loophole was closed, but not before it was milked to the point of crashing the economy.
Well, absolutely. And that's what we're doing globally right now. We have to look at it and say, okay, things are crashing. How do we stop this? How do we turn it around? How do we organize the chaos and put a system into place that works? He's just saying that from his perspective, he wants his side to win.
Yeah, see, I can completely and totally just shoot this whole thing down and say that this is in fact an entire conspiracy theory. You think he could say all those words in a row without a single gaffe?
That's a lot of talking for him without saying the uranium people need
Oh,
to be
Madagascar
by current President Obama.
$2 million shove the pressure.
What did the first lady had COVID? He told
Oh yeah,
everybody
he said
that-
the first lady had COVID, and
and
they
he
were
didn't
like,
realize that it was
I don't know. And he's like,
Kamala's
"Oh, yeah."
husband, the second gentleman. And I mean,
The guy's he's gone, which is why it's funny to me when these kinds of things sneak out, because yes, you could say, oh, well, yes, this is what he meant, but then you're just Jen Psaki. We don't know what he meant because the dude's bonkers.
This is me saying this is what his handlers meant for him to communicate. Was that we as the United States need to step up somehow and organize this chaos and make sure that the way that we run things becomes a prominent force in the world. We should have been a prominent force in the world, but now we're just a joke.
Yes. Well, to be fair, we were a prominent force in the world, but that was just 2 years ago. So, okay, you know what? I am going to put a lid on it, as Joe Biden would do. I am feeling quite iffy, and if I'm out of coffee, I'm out of life. So, Miss Monica, any closing thoughts?
One thing that I forgot to mention, if you like our
Yes.
channel, you like what we discuss, even though we get interrupted by the Doge, which...
Oh, she's a good Doge.
Oh, she's going to be created next time. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Make sure that you smash that like button. Tell your friends about us. Share us on Facebook, Instagram. We'd love to get more followers, to get more
Absolutely.
opinions. And as always, if you have a show idea, email us at hometownentertainmentgroup@gmail.com.
Very true. Once the, what did Biden call it? The winter of death and despair or whatever. Once it passes and everybody's not sick in this house anymore, then yes, new shows are coming. We definitely have things set up. We have plans. They're going to be silly. They're going to be fun, all that good stuff. So that's definitely all for us for today. Hopefully, we'll see y'all tomorrow.